And we're on. We're going to give everybody a few minutes to check in. This should be a great webinar today. Very exciting topic. Welcome, everybody. We're still going to just wait a couple of more minutes to be sure everybody's on board. For those of you who have joined us already, I just want to share that we are recording these. And so if there is if there's somebody that you want to share these with, John's going to type in the chat box our website and where you can access these. So if you have friends or anybody, a family member, whatever, who's not able to join us today, you can share the recording. And also you should get an email after the recording with the same information. So just so you know. I want to welcome back everybody who's been with us for the SOAR family webinar series. We've been doing this for a bit now, and we have some wonderful people who are with us almost every time. So thank you for that. And also we have SOAR, Super SOAR Parent certificates that we send out if you've been to 4 or more. And you get a Webinar Wizard certificate if you have been to 8 or more of our webinars. So just throwing that out there. It's kind of fun to get something in the mail that you can put on your refrigerator and show your kids. Ta-da! I'm a super parent. So.
Gail just noted that that her daughter Laura noticed the wizard certificate immediately on the fridge. Gail, what was her response to that? That might be fun to note. Oh, okay, cool certificate, fun.
That's great. That is super.
So Gail reported that Laura said, "Oh, cool."
That's right. Yeah. So it's great that you know, y'all are staying connected, and please give Laura our love. We love her dearly. So, all right. Well, I'm going to get started. It's about 3 minutes after, so we're going to go ahead and get started here today. So today's topic is unleash the power of your child's potential, how to grow your child's strengths. And I am Liz Simpson, and with me is John Wilson, and we're going to go through this together, okay? Let me see, there we go. So I wanted to start with a story, and if you joined us last week, we had the Ask the Experts, and Roy Sanders joined us. And he told a story about his son that was so perfect for this webinar that I'm borrowing that story. So forgive me for that, but it really fit. So Roy's son was in high school, a great kid, but you know, he's on the autism spectrum. He's not real, you know, social and outgoing. He has ADHD as well. And Roy, who is a psychiatrist, you know, knows his testing and all of that. And, you know, his IQ was a little bit on the low side. And so, you know, Roy knew all this about his son. And his son came to him one day and said, "Dad, you know, I'd like to join the chess team." And Roy said, well, I don't know. Chess, sure that's your best choice. Is there anything else you want to do? Nope, I want to join the chess team. And so Roy tried very hard to, give him a realistic answer on how that might go if he joined the chess team, because given all the information that he had in front of him, that was probably not going to be something that he would succeed at. But his son was persistent and went about it very methodically. His dad said, well, I don't really see it. His son went out and bought a CD on how to learn chess, and he studied it. And then he went back to school and he went to the chess club and he started playing chess with the chess club, and he was winning. And he was winning and winning and winning. And then finally, he was able to compete nationally. And so he is a, national chess competitor. And this wasn't something that Roy saw coming. So we're gonna kind of play off of that story today as we talk about unleashing our child's potential. We want to be able to recognize those strengths and support them. Okay, let me see if this works. There we go. So the main thing is, and the thing that hit Roy right away, and he's a professional, is what are your beliefs about your child's potential? What do you believe that they can do? And I think that's important because our beliefs guide our actions, and our beliefs guide our conversations with our children. So, and they spot that right away. So what are your beliefs about your child's potential? What are your beliefs about your child's strengths? And what are your beliefs about their challenges? Okay. So I really want you to take a minute, just take a few seconds and kind of let that ruminate around a little bit. What do you honestly believe about your child's potential? And what do you honestly believe about their strengths and their challenges? And that all adds up to, what are your beliefs about your child's abilities to be in control and to thrive in their lives? Okay? What do you believe they can do for themselves, for their future, to sort of be the heroes of their own life story? And I want to show you something. This is one of my favorite graphics, and it is kind of funny, but it's not all that funny, because sometimes when we have a belief that our child can't do it, we step in and we grab from them the power to be in control of their own lives, right? So looking back at Roy and his story, he was kind of saying, no, let's take that out. Let's don't look at that as a possibility. So we have to be careful about that in our child's lives, and it's all based on our beliefs. And I want to speak to that as well.
Well, before we go to the next slide, Liz,
Mm-hmm.
it is those beliefs. One of the things that I told I've told people is that I come with a manual, and that was written by Driven to Distraction by Ned Hallowell. And in that book, one of the things that he talks about is not allowing people with ADHD to ever think that they are things they can't do because we have ADHD or some type of learning disability. In fact, the reverse is true. We tend to be incredibly high achievers and because we have to work harder for what we are able to accomplish. But that being said, it's also important that you create reasonable expectations, and so that the expectations we create aren't crushing. I mean, and we all do it. My daughter when she was she was probably 7. She did her 7 or 8. She ran her first 5K, and she placed so far ahead of every other kid under 15 that they put, I think she was 31 out of 112 adults. And, instantly I'm like, oh, I've got an Olympic runner on my hands. So, we have to temper our expectations so that they're reasonable, but we never want to lower the bar because of their abilities or what we believe are their disabilities.
That's right. And we're going to talk about that too, John, as we go through today, where the most reasonable belief about their ability to succeed should come from them. So if she at that point had said, I want to be an Olympic runner, I'm going to start training right now, you'd have been 100% behind her. But for us to step in front of them and say, oh my God, you should be an Olympic runner, that's different. So we're going to talk about where those beliefs about ability need to come from. And a lot of it needs to come from them. And I'm also going to talk about why we have the beliefs that we have and why sometimes we focus on the negative, and not necessarily negative, but on the challenges. Okay, so when we get a diagnosis for our kid of attention deficit disorder, they will hand you a list, and you've already done the checklist prior to that, of all of the characteristics of attention deficit disorder. And the ones that stand out for us, just like these in red, tend to be the ones that start to seed our beliefs. Okay, and it's normal. We all do it. Oh my God, they are inattentive. What am I going to do about that? They are hyperactive. What's going to happen? And so those things are there, but we need to not focus on that first and foremost, because what happens is we lose our ability to look at the positive, or it gets a little more buried because we're concerned. So this happens to all parents when we get that diagnosis. We start to worry about the things that look like major challenges. Okay. So we talk a lot at SOAR, and we've talked a lot on these webinars about positive reframing. And so it's really important that you look at those things that could be considered negative, but are always considered challenges. And you look at, how can I reframe those things? Is my child intuitive, tenacious, or hyperactive and impulsive? Are they an individualist? Or are they, have such different ideas that nobody wants to play with them? Are they a risk taker? Or are they just climbing all over everything and have no control? They're impulsive, right? So just look at how you can reframe these into something more positive. And I'm telling you, a lot of the things that our kids are, meaning hyperactive or intuitive or risk takers, those are all really important skills that they're going to need as an adult, if they can get a control on them so that they're using those skills to meet their goals. Does that make sense, John?
It does.
Good. All right. So I want to talk about what happens when we look at the negative. And this is really important because a lot of the behaviors that you're seeing from your children are not necessarily because you were looking at the negative, but perhaps they're in an environment. Sometimes school will do it. Sometimes other people who have influence in their life will do it. But we tend to focus on, you can't do that, or that's inappropriate, or that's not going to work, or, and how we frame that is important. Because when we do that, this is a story about how elephant trainers are able to train these elephants. When they're very young, they tie them with a very big rope. And the elephant baby tries to pull away and tries to pull away, and they can't, because they're a baby and the rope is very big. And every day they tie them up to that rope. And as they get bigger, the rope gets smaller, but the elephant ceases to pull on it anymore. So they can be tied up with a fairly small rope that they could break easily, but they have learned over time not to do that, that it was fruitless. Why should I even try? Okay. And there's another example of this I want to share. These are fleas in a jar. And in this, some scientists got together and they wanted to study about learned helplessness, and that's going to be the key here. And so they had a jar full of fleas, and at first the fleas were popping all out of the jar. You wouldn't want to be in that lab, right? You know, so they were just popping all out of the jar. And then they decided to put a top on it. So they put a top on it. They left the top on there for 2 or 3 days, not a long time, just 2 or 3 days. And when they took the top off the jar, the fleas no longer jumped out of the jar. They jumped as high as the glass ceiling that they were put within. All of their motivation, these are fleas, right? All their motivation to jump out of that jar was gone, okay? So we know that there's a thing called learned helplessness, and that unless we allow our kids to follow their nature, to be who they are, we are holding them back. And here is my very, very favorite. Here is a little girl, probably diagnosed early on with ADHD. We know this girl. She is one of my daughters, as a matter of fact. And it's not true. That's not my daughter, but she is like my daughter. She believed she could, so she did, and now she's in timeout. Okay, so do we do that sometimes? Do we sometimes see our kids sort of reaching further than they thought they could, or moving in a direction that we're not comfortable with, and we put them in timeout? Okay, and then, you know, that whole learned helplessness thing, we have to be careful of it. If it happens over time and time again, we're going to lose them. Okay, so the elephant and the flea, those two stories. My point about those two stories is your mindset is a belief about your abilities, okay? And it's really important. I'm going to tell a story on myself. I was not a good student. I did just as much as I had to do to get by. I knew that if I got a C or maybe a B, sometimes a D, that they'd take it, I'd get to move to the next class. That was learned very early on. So there was no reason for me to put any effort in, and I was moving on through just like everybody else, you know. And so if you look at my report cards, they are not stellar through high school. But when I got to college and I got to choose what I wanted to do for myself, what I wanted to study, what I was really interested in, my grades started to go way up. Anyway, long story short, after being a teacher for many years, I decided to go back and get my doctorate. And my parents were supportive, but once I got my doctorate, my mother, no matter where we went, we would go to Walmart together, no matter where we went, she would say, of all the kids in the family that I thought would get a PhD, this is not the one. And I was like, Mom, please, Mom, come on. So yeah, and so we have to be careful because our mindset is a belief about our abilities. And fortunately, my mother did not say that out loud a lot, but she clearly felt it as I was growing up.
Liz, I wanted to add that, you know, when Jay, and by the way, Jay has given me permission and Landry to tell some of these stories, but when Jay was in kindergarten, he was the only kid in his class that could not read. And so we made the very difficult decision to hold him back and do a second kindergarten year. It's one of the greatest choices as parents we ever made, but we really wrestled with it. But back when he was a kindergartner, I would never have guessed, you know, I mean, I really wondered what level of capabilities he had. And, you know, and so he has surprised me. You know, that choice has led to the fact that, you know, by the time he was in the 7th grade, he had the High Lexile in his class. He's an all honor student. He's the smartest, you know, member of the family. And I never would have guessed that when he was a kindergartner, that that potential existed. But we never curbed the opportunity. And so for him, what happened was when he finally was able to read, it unlocked a world, and he so immersed himself in that world. And so we have to really understand that the power our mindsets play with our kids. And so this, this webinar is really going to be about, what we can do to nurture and kind of fan the flames of those beautiful things about our kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, John. That was a fabulous story, and I appreciate that sharing. So what we need to think about our beliefs about ourselves and our kids' beliefs about themselves is that they're set over time. So if we hold them back, if using John's story or even my story, if our parents had said early on, oh no, this is not the intellectual, not going to happen, and they said that often enough, it wouldn't have happened. It would not have happened. And then multiple environments, and this is important. If your children are still in school, K through 12, you want to be careful when you go to the IEPs that you get the IEP folks on a positive note. You want them to be able to say, well, for instance, Liz is struggling with math, but we think we can help her improve by doing these things. And we see her as having a great brain, and we're going to put that all together. So you want them to bring out the positive and talk about the tools they're going to use to get to the positive, and not just talk about, well, we're going to give them 3 homework assignments instead of 5 like everybody else. That's not a high bar. You want them to give the tools rather than a low expectation. Okay. And then our mindset about our beliefs about our ability can change. Okay. It can change. It can be changed. And our containers, again, are the feedback from the environment, our individual experiences. Every time I try to solve something and come up on it and I can't do it, that takes away my belief that I am competent in that area. Okay, so we want to give kids tools so they can do it. Okay, especially things that they're interested in. And then our inner voice. I want you to listen to your inner voice, mom and dad, about your abilities, right? Just sometimes you go, well, I don't know, this is not my thing. I don't think I can do that. Let me give you an example. My daughter and I are taking care of an Airbnb house down the road. They have a big lawn. They have a riding lawnmower. And she mowed the lawn a week ago. We went down yesterday to mow the lawn, and she had left the key on so that the mower was dead, and the people are coming today. So it was, oh no. And so I immediately got on my phone to call for help because I have no mechanical ability whatsoever. And my belief is I can't figure it out. She got on her phone, looked up the model of the mower, looked around the garage, found the charger that you can plug into the wall for the mower, which she assumed the owner would have, put the whole thing together. We went for a walk for an hour, came back, started it up, off it went. She believed that she could be mechanical, that there was no reason why not, and she could figure it out. And I was amazed because I was panicked. Okay, so that's what our beliefs will do to our behaviors. So now, how do we unleash the power? That's the question, right? How do we unleash the power within our kids? I love that elephant. I love elephants in general, just saying. Okay, so the main thing is we have to help our children rewrite their narrative. If we're seeing our children not use their strengths, or maybe even not being able to identify their strengths, then we need to help them rewrite that narrative. So I want you to talk with your child about the story they tell themselves about themselves. And you know this story because you hear it bubbling up just in their side talk and their self-talk. when they're talking to you. So you know this story, and we're going to help them rewrite it. We're going to think about that. So a question for you is, again, are there stories that you tell yourself as a parent? You know, if I allow them, here's a story that you could tell. If I don't do it, it'll never get done. I'm in charge. I'm control central. I've got to handle everything. I'm it. You know, without me, everything falls apart. That's a story that you're telling yourself that is creating difficulty for you to be able to hand over, or to be able to even examine what your child's strengths are. And we all do it. One of my friends called me on it a year ago. Why are you always command central? You know, and I thought, you're right. I need to stop that. And what do you think are the stories that you think your child might be telling themselves? What are they telling themselves about what they can do? And I'll tell you one story that is pretty common with our kids. They're saying, well, I don't have to do it. Somebody else is going to do it. And they're saying that because that's been their experience over time. Okay. So we have to hand them their reins to their own power as soon as we possibly can. Even if your child right now is 13, 16, 18, we can still do this and work with them to get this done. And actually, it's a pretty prime time. Okay. So one way, and this is a good time to do this when we're all, you know, kind of stuck in the house together. One way is to share your story of growing up, to talk about your place in the family, to talk about your strengths and challenges. My family is all aware that my mother had no expectation for me whatsoever, because I tell different stories about that, and that one I just told you often. So share about your place in the family, your strengths and challenges, your dreams for the future. When you were growing up, what were you excited about? What did you want to do with your life? And if there were barriers to what you wanted to do with your life, or if there were left turns to what you wanted to do with your life, how did that, you know, play into the story that you tell of your life, right? So I want you to think about that. And where are you now? And what are your hopes for your future as a parent? You know, share that with them. And we have that conversation often because our children are adults now. And we want them to be independent, but we want them to still come and see us and all of those things. So we talk about that. Tell your ancestor story. If there's a quirky ancestor, and I'll bet there is, tell their story. You know, my aunt was similar to me. She did, you know, so in school and whatever. And when World War II came up, somebody came into the cafeteria at the University of Alabama where she was a student, and they were with a Civil Air Patrol. And they said, is there anybody in here who wants to sign up to be a pilot? We're offering, you know, almost free pilot training because they needed pilots. And my aunt's hand just shot up. She didn't know anything about flying. She just thought that'd be exciting. And so off she went. And she was a pilot in World War II, flying airplanes from the factories to the borders where the male pilots would come and take them into the war theater. And it changed her life. But she did not do anything the normal route of go to school, go to college, go to this. She dropped out of college to do to be a pilot, and on it went. So if you have stories like that, share that, because there's no right path. There's no A, B, C, D to success. It depends on your beliefs about you and what your core goal is in life, your authentic goal for you. Okay? All right. So how do we get from that, you sharing stories, talking about stories that are not just the You got to this, you got to that, you got to this. But telling stories of people who did it their own way in their own time, that's good. It gives us some flexibility. Now we can open the conversation. Okay. And so how do we do that? Well, since we're all the author of our own life story, have them tell you how they would rewrite the story they tell themselves. And this is not so far-fetched for kids, because a lot of them understand, for instance, the fact that on Facebook, we are creating our own story. We're creating our own story. A lot of things that happen on Facebook, we line it out to be the story that we want people to know of us. Okay, it's not necessarily our day-to-day, but that's the part we want people to know of us. And then the other thing is that kids are really attracted to video games, partly because they get to be an avatar. They get to be somebody with strengths and challenges and tools to face those challenges, and they can be successful and all of those things. So all we're doing is bringing those notions down and back to the child. So we're saying, you know what, you really are the author of your own life story. You know, you're here for 90 years. You want that to look like, you know, what are you going to do with that? Okay. And then where do they see themselves in the big picture? And when I talk about big picture, that can mean anything. That can mean in the family dynamics. Again, my brother was a basketball star, a state champion. He's 6'10". He's just absolutely amazing. Went on to become a U.S. senator, the whole thing. I was in the shadows of that. And that's where I was in the big picture. And if you'd asked me at, you know, 5, 10, 15, or 20, and still that's my answer. I was in that shadow. And did that change my life trajectory? Actually, it gave me a lot of freedom because I didn't have the same pressure he did. But where do you see yourself in the big picture? And if your child is adopted, great. That I'm sure you've had these discussions, but have them again, because we're a group, we're a relationship. Where do we fit in? What strengths does your character or do you have, right? So when I say character, I'm talking about your child. So what strengths do they have? And you ask your child, what are your strengths? What are your strengths? And we're going to talk about that in a minute. What obstacles do they have to overcome? And what are their dreams for the future? And here's the other thing. If you sit down with them and say, let's really think this out. Let's make it visual. Let me interview you. That would really be fun. That would be so fun. Videotape them talking about it. Or make a vision board, or make their own little book through PowerPoint. This is me, or whatever. But put it together, because it is a really important activity to be able to spend some time with. Okay. And they have 3 chapters in their life: now, teen, adult, life accomplishments, and retirement.
Hey, Liz, Pierre, and by the way, Pierre, we so deeply appreciate you. I think you've attended every single one of our webinars, but he said something that really moved me. He said, it took me 55 years to realize that I was not as dumb as I thought. Please do not make the same mistake.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you. That was so wonderful. Such a wonderful comment, because it does. And I know people who still haven't realized that they have potential. So what we want to do is, when we're talking to our child, and this is sort of how we can go through talking to our child, we want to talk about islands of competence, specialized expertise. We want them to have victory lists. We want them to think about their self-talk. And we want them to be able to set attainable goals, because this is going to bubble some stuff up. Your kids might say, you know, I've always wanted to, you know, ride a horse or whatever, but I don't know if I can do it, or whatever. And so as it bubbles up, we want to help build that positive self-talk around their goals and their strengths. Okay. And a thing that is an incredible tool for finding your strengths is to help other people. the research would say that finding your passion and finding your purpose and finding your strength often comes back to what you give to other people. And then the other thing is we're going to celebrate our successes.
Liz, two things I want to share here, and that is that every self-help book I've ever read, or including the one of the ones that I enjoy the most, which is Covey's 7 Habits, every single one of them certainly speak to the fact that any real measure of personal life satisfaction has to have as a component of that giving something of yourself to something bigger than just you.
Mhm.
And it harkens back to my favorite Martin Luther King Jr. quote, which is, "It doesn't take a college degree to serve, to give. It doesn't take money to give or to serve. It just takes a heart filled with kindness and a soul filled with passion." And so those are things that we can absolutely impart on our kids, that if we give of ourselves to something greater than just ourselves, we begin to nurture those gifts and strengths and spirits.
Absolutely. And all the research says that, John, because when we're giving to others, it is nurturing our strengths. And plus our environment changes. We start to get that positive feedback from those folks that we are helping. And then that starts to affect our positive self-talk and all of that. So increase our positive self-talk. So it is important on so many levels, and the research absolutely supports it. So islands of competence, for me, this means that I have an area in my life that I really get and I'm really good at, an area. And so Bo Jackson is an athlete, but not just he started as a football player at Auburn, then he went to baseball, then I don't know what else, probably hockey or something else. And also he marketed, he had all sorts of marketing things going on for him. And he was a Nike guy for a while. So he was all things athletic for the period of time when he was famous. And I still think he's famous, but Rachel Ray, same thing. She started with a cookbook and she loves cooking. And now she is all things cooking. You say Rachel Ray, it's about cooking. She has her own show. She has her own brand. She has her own food. Kim Kardashian is all things self-promoting. She's really good at self-promoting. So she comes up with all sorts of ideas. They're crazy ideas. She's making masks. She's doing this, she's doing that. But she can self-promote it forever. She is really good at that. Justin Timberlake, same thing in the music industry. Bill Gates, same thing in the computer industry. So those are islands of competence, something that it just really grows. Specialized expertise, on the other hand, are those little niches of information or niches of talent that we have that other people don't necessarily have, or that we stand out as having a particular strength in. So Temple Grandin comes to mind. She's very, very astutely aware and incredibly talented about looking at the world through a cow's eyes. Now, who would think anybody needed that specialized expertise? It's been incredible. She has remodeled the whole meat industry because she is able to do that specialized expertise. Banksy is this artist who remains anonymous, but he takes things, and if you can see this picture, he takes things like a regular phone booth, and then he goes behind it and he draws all these things, so it actually tells a story. He's really, really good at it. And he is anonymous. He doesn't sell his work. He just puts it out there. Tom Hanks is an incredible actor. He is an incredible actor. He can become any character you point at him to be. But he's not selling the Tom Hanks brand. He's not, promoting acting as Avenger. He just does Tom Hanks, and he does it really well. And Mozart, same thing, music. Mozart did Mozart. He didn't do Beethoven. He didn't, put the industry together. He just did amazing music. Okay, so does that make sense, the difference between those? Okay, and celebrate victories, celebrate every tiny victory. This is important. So your kids are out there, they have this specialized expertise, and I don't know what it is. I want you to think about what it is, but they have it. And they have these islands of competence. And then they need to celebrate. It's great if you can visually have a victory list where you can celebrate things that you've done. And if not, just sort of keep a mental note, right? Just keep a mental note. So for me, walking through my life, I get to be at this end of the scale, and your kids are way over here, but I've been around for a while. And for me, there were things like finally talking my parents into getting me a horse. That took forever. I check it. Yes, we did that. And then showing a horse against people who were trainers, and I was successful, check that off. And then later being able to have the opportunity to break a stallion, which was, I just sort of jumped in like we do. And I was very successful at that. So check that off, you know. So go through and share your victory list with your kids so that they can share with you theirs, or they can start to build theirs, okay? Positive self-talk. And this is for you and the kids. We want to be sure that we are doing the positive self-talk that encourages us, that pulls us up, that draws our strength out. We don't want to do self-talk that keeps us in a negative space. We want our self-talk to be positive. Here's something that you need to know. Your kids are listening to your self-talk. And if they hear you be negative, like, oh, it's never going to work, or, oh, I'm so, you know, this gray hair is killing me. I just look terrible. This is awful. I can't go out, you know, whatever. They're going to model that. They're going to actually imitate that. And you're modeling negative behavior. So what I want you to do is model positive behavior, positive self-talk. So, wow, that really felt good that I was able to, you know, walk 4 miles instead of 3 miles. I feel really good about that. Instead of dragging in like the cat in the mirror and going, oh, that was so hard. I'll never be able to do it again. That was terrible. You know, so watch what you're saying. You are being watched. Okay. And then exactly speaking to what John said earlier, when your kids discover their strengths and their passions and they want to go in that direction, help them make set goals that are smart, okay? Smart goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And so let's go back to Roy's son. Roy's son sort of did this on his own. He said specifically, I want to learn chess. And then he decided to do something that he could do. He got a CD, and then he had to learn that CD. And then he had to see if that learning was worked. And so he went to the chess team and he tried it out. It worked. So being a chess master became achievable. And it was realistic for him because he had done that groundwork, and then he went. So, and he did it in a fairly short amount of time. So he set those goals for himself, and therefore he was successful. If our kids have trouble setting goals, then we break it down and say specifically, what is it that you want to do? What's step 1, step 2, step 3? Let's see if we can get that done. And then we'll build on that, okay? And then helping others. And this is one of my favorite quotes, is helping others achieve their dreams and you will achieve yours. So you never, you know, by being helpful with others and watching their growth, it helps you to grow. And the feedback that you get from people who you are helping helps you to grow. And again, it builds that environment around you that allows you to be more successful and find your strengths, okay? So And then celebrate your success. Always, always celebrate your success. Celebrate every little step along the way. Celebrate your success. So let me see. I think that there we go. So I'm going to stop sharing real quick. There we go. And are there any questions or?
Karen asked, what about the child who gives up quickly?
Okay, so Karen, as we were talking about earlier, that's a learned experience. They have determined at some point that is a better option for them to give up easily. So what you have to do is break that child's task into really small portions that they can achieve. And I'll tell you what I used to do when I was teaching at special ed. I had a child who was like that. I can't read, I can't write, don't even try, this ain't gonna work, I'm never gonna be able to do it, I hate the computer, I'm not gonna do that either, nothing's gonna happen. And so I said, okay, well, can you just come over here and sit down? Well, yeah, I can do that. Okay, so do you have a pencil? Well, yeah, I have a pencil. Well, can I see it? Well, yeah, there it is. Good job, fantastic, thanks. Can you get a piece of paper out? Yep, I can do that. All right, well, but I'm not gonna write. I'm not gonna write. Okay, all right, just get your paper out. Okay, can you put your pencil on the paper? Well, yeah. Can you do it point down? Yeah, I can do that. Can you move it around? Well, yeah, I can do that, you know. And so off it went. One of my other students who was in the room said, you might as well give up. You're going to be writing here in about 20 minutes. And so it's break it down until, and have every step be a success, even if it's that silly. Okay.
I would add to that you know, those young, you know, the kids that give up so quickly, there's this learned helplessness, you know,
Yeah.
that they've adopted, and part of it is, you know, sometimes it's defiant, sometimes it's just the belief that they can't. And so one of the, you know, SOAR stands for Success Oriented Achievement Realized, because what we're trying to do is create success outcomes. So everything we do has been focused on helping achieve a level or a measure of success that we can then draw on.
Right.
What are kids motivated to do? They're motivated to do things that they're good at. They're motivated to do things that they're interested in. And so, you know, how do you work with a kid who gives up quickly? You find ways to stretch the things that they don't want to give up on and try and incorporate those into other areas of their life. You
Yeah.
know, I've got another one that says, what do I do if my 15-year-old son is really good at gaming? And I will, Liz, I'll let you answer after I do. We embraced it as a family. When he was 14 years old, he was involved. He was playing a game called Brawlhalla, and he spent an inordinate amount of time playing this game. And he came to us and he said, "Hey, the national championship Brawlhalla tournament is in Atlanta. Can we go?" And so when he was 14 years old, his mom took him to this gaming conference, and he began to meet some of the people that he'd been playing online with. He went again when he was 15. He went again when he was 16. And last year, my wife said, "John, you need to take him." And so I did, and there were other kids at that conference. And when they realized, when I would talk to them, and they said, "Your son is such and such, man, he's amazing," and then and then he you know, he made it to the semis, and they were actually announcers with his game on the screen, and they were announcing like a football game, and it was being broadcast online, and you know, so we embraced that in a way that was really quite extraordinary, and it made for very special moments for all three of us. I'll let you jump in there too.
Yeah, so I'm going to say, if your child is not a you know, a national award-winning, you know, video gamer, still What you should do is sit down next to your child while they're playing video games, because the video games have a lot of complexity to them that your child is able to navigate and motivate, move around, navigate within that game. And so what John was saying earlier was taking some of that experience that you now see that they know how to do, to be able to problem solve in the moment, to be able to, take immediate action, all of those things. You need to then be able to translate that into real life or use that as a metaphor. So let's say this is a challenge in the game. What would you do? Where are you going to go? How are we going to handle that? Just like in the game, you're amazing in the game. How are you going to help me with this one? You could do it, and they will. If they see that you see and you respect and you honor their strength within that game, you can pull it out and use it for other things. So that's my answer. Any other questions? I like the way you guys are thinking. And
There was I've got two more questions here. Is there a way to get them to see their strengths to match to achievable goals?
Again, the whether a goal is achievable or not depends on the bites we take out of the goal, one step at a time. Okay, so I remember playing tennis with my brother one time, he was very good, but I beat him. And I stood right there on the tennis court and I said, you know what? I'm really good at this. I'm going to be a tennis person. I'm going to be a tennis star or whatever. And he went, right. Because I did not have the discipline at that age to do what it took to get there. However, had somebody said, okay, well, first, let's see what a coach might think about your abilities, or first, let me see that swing and we need to work on that, whatever. If they had broken it down for me, it may have been achievable. But at that time, I only could see the big picture. I beat you, I can beat anybody. No, not really. So you have to break it down and into smaller bites and make sure each of those smaller bites are achievable.
The question, there's a question for me from Dana. Did you limit the amount of time your son could practice on the computer? My son wants to be on 12 hours a day and doesn't want to do anything else anymore. He used to be a voracious reader. Now he's not interested. So if you've seen any of our other webinars, one of the things that we've referenced is, trying to create a healthy play diet, how to gamify things. But in our family, we created a series of expectations, and if those expectations were met, then I recognized that his gaming world was his community, and so for us, as long and a big part of that was there had to be a physical component to some of his play, and so if his homework was done, if his responsibilities at home were done. If he had gotten, as long as he was incorporating, and for him, it was tennis or hiking or biking, as long as he had achieved those aspects of what he needed or wanted to do, then he was allowed to be gaming and playing with his friends, as long as, and again, I'm only telling you what we did. I'm not an expert in this particular aspect of, I'm just another parent sharing, as long as he didn't get too out of hand, that there wasn't yelling and screaming, that he could detach if he needed to, and that that he didn't do it to the point of it being unhealthy. And so he needed to take breaks every little while, so that he didn't just find himself being that person who never got out of their pajamas and just got on their computer. One of the other things that we did that helped a lot was his computer wasn't in his room. It was in the kitchen. And so he was in a common space so that we could interact with him. We could kind of gauge and listen and hear and see what was happening. Those are some of the steps we took to mitigate what we believed were the potential harmful arenas. There's another question here. How do you help a child who doesn't see the connection between achievement and effort? When things get tough, she gives up.
And so I would say you want to look in those areas of strength that she has. So you want to look into areas that she is comfortable in. So for example, and I'm just throwing this out there, let's say she likes animals and she wants to help others, which would be good, and get out and be a dog walker or something. So that's going to be tricky to start with. So you want to break each of those down, but you're going off of what she's already passionate about. She's got to learn that she can build persistence in through a venue that she is already passionate about. Then you can move that experience, you can add that experience to part of her story, part of her self-talk, part of her narrative. I'm really good at this, is what I'm really good at. And I had to do this, that, and the other to get there. You can then say, well, what about this arena? Let's give it the same, steps. Let's follow the same steps, see how far we can go. So you can put those two things together. Okay.
There's a question, and I wish I had a better answer for you, but perhaps Liz does. What if all they want to do is game? Shouldn't we be concerned about brain development concerns? And I think the best answer that I know is things in moderation and making sure that you incorporate other aspects of their life so that you're taking care of the mind, body, spirit, together are important. That world is our kids' world. And I recognize that I'm not raising my kids to live in the world I grew up in or the world that I live now. I'm trying to raise them for the world they're going to grow up into. And so, Liz, do you want to?
Well, I thought that was a beautiful answer. I think that just like John mentioned, the play diet, there is also the learning diet. And so we want to help our kids learn in many different environments. So we need to have time for them to learn social skills. They are being social online, but they're not necessarily learning social skills. They are learning the pattern of acceptable social behavior, but it's not necessarily transferable. And some acceptable behaviors online would not be acceptable in real life. So you want to give your child an opportunity to use each area of their brain, which is social, cognitive, emotional, I forgot the other two, you just named them. Mental, social, emotional, physical, there you go, physical and spiritual. And so we want to be sure that they have time in all of those areas in their lives, okay? And so you get to mediate that. The other thing I would say is always try to spend time with your child, having them explain to you all about their video game, whether you like video games or not. You bought it for them, that it's, you need to sit down and really see what that environment looks like in their world. And then you can have discussions that can help move them in and out of that area when you need to. So I hope that makes sense. Okay.
That looks like that wraps up the questions, and we want to thank everybody for attending. As always, we deeply appreciate you. You can find any of these webinars at SOARNC. I'm typing that in now, soarnc.org/webinars.
And there's a backslash after that too, John. One more backslash.
All right, and then we we'll be coming to you again on Thursday. You want to give a teaser for Thursday?
So Thursday, we're talking about sometimes our kids are difficult to talk to, right? They kind of shut down, or they want to argue or scream, or, they just, it's very difficult to get through to them. And you can see that emotional bubble starting to grab them, and then you lose them. And so we're going to talk on Thursday about what they're communicating really, and how we can move the conversation so that we don't get to those volcanoes, as John calls them. We're going to be a little bit more aware of what's behind those emotions before we get there. So that's what we're going to do on Thursday. It is what is my child trying to tell me? And so I look forward to having you there. So you should find that in your inbox today, and I'll send another one tomorrow just to be sure.
Okay. Last thing, and there was a question about any news on June camps. On Friday, we announced that due to our concerns regarding COVID, and they are myriad, bringing in vectors from all over the country, keeping our campers safe while they're here, and then potentially sending asymptomatic campers home back to their home communities. The concerns regarding PPE and social distancing and how that would dramatically affect all the activities that make camp so special. It's like so many other camps, we recognize that our first priority is creating quality, safe, healthy programming for kids. And in this environment, we did not believe we could do so. And so it is with great regret and terrible sorrow that I share that we have chosen to suspend operations for the summer of 2020. However, we're still going to be here providing you with resources and webinars and opportunities to learn and grow.
Right. Thank you for joining us, everybody. We really appreciate having you. And again, we'll be here every Tuesday and Thursday as we move through the summer. If you have any questions or concerns or want to let us, hear you, please email me at liz@soarnc.org. And John and I will both be there to answer any questions that you have. So a great Tuesday. We'll see you later.
Bye-bye.